silent or not, and if it's not, please put it into the silent mode. Thank you so much for doing that. Okay, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to Cheryl. She's on Israel time, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so today's share is about the theta ego. And the question that I posed is, are we doomed forever? Right? The theta ego casts a large shadow on Jewish history and the Jewish people. And does that mean, like, oh, we're always going to run into a problem because of the theta ego? Right? We read the Parsha Tisa every year. And every year, the same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, they did it again. I'm waiting for one time where they don't worship the golden calf. They still do every year. Does that mean we are just doomed annually to experience the theta ego? And it still puts us in a precarious position. So that's going to be the topic. So the first part of this year is to really look at, the severity of what happened. So we begin with the Torah, which describes the narrative in six short psukim, right? I'm not going to go into an analysis of every line in this parsha because we could really do a course for a whole year on just analyzing every pasuk in every phrase. We're not going to do that. Just going to just summarize briefly the narrative, right? So the people thought that Moshe was delayed, right? According to rabbinic commentaries, Rashi and Midrash and others, right? He said that he'd be back. I'm coming back on the 40th day. When you're coming back, right? So they actually when I went away for a trip, Cole was like, well, when are you coming back? And I was like, she expected it the longer time and not the shorter time. With the Israel, they were like, okay, it's the 40th day, and it's the morning of the 40th day. They didn't realize that they had to go through customs. He had to get the bags. It was a long trip from the mountain, and so he was delayed. And so, so they gathered with Aaron. Here, make us gods, right? Lanu Elohim, and this is Elohim, right? Which is not holy, right? So you can say the word Elohim, right? Asher Yelchu Lefanenu, will go before us. You don't know what happened to Moshe, and so the story. Aaron said, we're not going to talk about his complicity in this, but he says, take off your gold jewelry. And bring them to me. So they did that. And then they brought all the gold to Aaron. He took them and he formed and fashioned this ego, this golden calf. And he says, okay, so this is your God, and this is the one that brought you out of Eretz Mitzrayim. Obviously, every line here is loaded with questions, but again, we're not going to cover all of that. So he made an altar. He said there'll be a chag Hashem machar. Yes, there's a question. Did they mean it Hashem? Was it intermediary? The whole question of, was it really idolatry? Was it just an intermediary? And all of these questions we're not going to really get into. And they got up in the morning and they made sacrifices, and they ate and they drank, and the korban's, I guess, and then they and they rose to dance. Okay, so this is the basic idea, right? There are many questions that we're not going to get into for the sake of time. Just going to present this idea. So this was a tremendous sin. It was a severe sin. It was an egregious error that the people made. So according to Rashi and many of the other Meforshim, they worship the golden calf. I know there's a question, did he worship, did he pray, was it intermediary? Once again, we're not going to get into that, right? And the basic idea is that they had just heard, this is the big question, they had just heard on the mountain. Machlokas, where they heard everything, only two mitzvos, but at least they heard that Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I'm the Lord your God, which is a mitzvah of belief in Hashem, and not to make any idol. And yet they are making an idol, right? Within 40 days, they transgress the fundamental principle of the Torah, right? So, and as you know, right, so many of the Meforshim, they try to minimize the sin of the people. And minimize means, well, it wasn't so bad. They didn't mean it. It was an intermediary. They thought it was Moshe, et cetera, et cetera. So again, we're not going to get into that. But, right, and I think that they, when I hear those questions, I'm like, oh, okay. Aaron, he tried his best. Otherwise, he was going to afraid. Okay, so he evaded a little bit of his responsibility. When I read those before, I'm like, oh, Baruch Hashem, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't so bad, right? And that's how the Meforshim, they make me feel better about the entire incident. And yet, there's a problem with those approaches, right? Because if it wasn't so bad, then why was it so bad? You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, for the moment I feel better. I can go into the next pasuk. But wait a second, we just said it was a terrible thing. But it wasn't so terrible. Well, it was a terrible thing. Like, we have to come to terms. It was a terrible thing, right? Moshe, in several places, and we'll read in the Parsha, he calls it a chata'ah gedolah, a great sin, right? He says it with respect to Bnei Israel. He says it to Aaron. He says it to Hashem. It was a great sin, right? And Hashem right away wanted to destroy the Jewish people because of this sin. If it wasn't such a bad sin, then why would Hashem want to destroy the Jewish people? Right? He says, I'm going to make you the great nation, right? I tried it with these people. It didn't work. I'm going to try you. You'll still be in connection to Avram Avinu, so fulfill the prophecy to Avram Avinu. But it's a bad thing. It's a terrible sin. He wouldn't want to destroy the. It was just, well, it was only an intermediary, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't hang together. And furthermore, as we saw a few weeks ago, many of the Meforshim say that the mitzvah of the Mishkan was given to atone for the sin. If it wasn't such a tremendous sin, then why would we need a whole Mishkan to atone for it? Why would we need a whole service of the Avodah, meaning that whole institution of the Mishkan and then the Beis HaMikdash would be to atone for this great sin. If it wasn't such a great sin, why would we need such an eternal kind of testament to atonement? And furthermore, something that we didn't cover a few weeks ago, but the whole institution of Yom Kippur, almost the whole yontif of Yom Kippur as a day of kapara, according to many Meforshim, it was associated with the sin of the golden calf. So if it wasn't such a great sin, then why would we need a whole day for eternity? Then, to atone for it. All right, so for all of these reasons, it's difficult for me to side with the people that make us feel better and say that it wasn't such a great sin. I think that we have to accept it was a great sin. And a great sin must have been the sin of idolatry, right? Because that is an egregious sin. It's like Kol Torah Kula. Torah doesn't mean anything if you don't believe in Hashem, right? So that's the sin of idolatry. However, I'm still troubled by the idea that the whole institution of the Mishkan and the entire Yom Kippur service as a Day of Atonement is simply a result of one incident, right? I know I used that as part of the argument. It was a great sin, but that was just to show that how in our tradition we see that it was a grave sin. I don't have to agree with that whole premise, however. And I find it difficult, right? The whole sin, and it just shows the great shadow that Beta Ego cast. But I'm uncomfortable with that. I mean, we wouldn't have Yom Kippur if we didn't have Beta Ego. We wouldn't have the Mishkan if we didn't have the Beta Ego. I know I came on the side a couple of weeks ago saying, no, I think that I'm more of an idealist. No, we always had to have a place to a central location in order to focus and channel our spiritual energies, right? And to have the Shekhinah dwelling among us anyway, without the sin of the golden calf, right? So I'm still bothered by these ideas. Okay. And in addition, I struggle to understand why this one sin, even though I agree it was terrible, it was egregious, it was grave, warrants such a severe punishment. And I will, give you a couple of, we're in the middle of page 2. So this is like 2A, right? If you, in these discussions, if you'll tell me it's due to the speed in which they broke the first and second commandments. It was such a grave sin because it also happened the way. Well, I will say to that they didn't really grasp what loyalty to Hashem was. They still couldn't see him. We spend a lot of time in the Meforshim to say that it was a terrible thing because they went through all those miracles. But honestly speaking, I don't think that I would totally get what Hashem meant, even with all of those miracles. I'm still like, what would it be like if we went through Yetzias Mitzrayim? Would we be on such a madriga that, all of a sudden we could fulfill all of the spiritual requirements of what being devoted to Hashem was? It still was a learning experience for the people of Israel, right? I think if we focus on that, and I really would like you to imagine that, would it be so easy to be 100% from just because we went through a miracle, many miracles? We don't know what being from is. We don't know what observing Torah mitzvahs is. We don't even know what that's about. The second point on this argument that I'm making is, what about a do-over, right? A do-over. Many people in the village play golf, right? Anyone here play golf? No, not too many. I got a lot of neighbors that play golf, and I played golf. We're not to play golf in Springfield, and it's definitely not a Jewish game. To hit a ball 400 yards and get it into a little hole, we hire people to do that for us, right? So it's so hard, it's so difficult. And then when I first started playing with a group of guys from the shul, so they knew I wasn't that good. And the first tee shot that I did that went into the forest went this way instead of this way. They said, "Hey, we're going to give you a do-over." And in golf, they call it a mulligan. They give you a mulligan. When you're a novice, when you first start off, they're not so strict with you, right? They give you a do-over. They let you do it again. The same thing happened, I want you to know. It went in this way instead of that way, right? But the principle is, when you're first starting out with something, you make a mistake. right? So the Jewish people made a mistake. They were just starting, as I am leading to say, they just started learning what it means to observe what Hashem. They'd only seen the idols of Egypt, and they didn't know what it meant to serve the unseen God. All right, and so that was 2 points. Well, one, 2A and 2B, and now number 3. Later in history, the Jewish people worshipped idols many, many times. Many, many, many times. Right? Many, 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 many. Hi, Manny. How are you? Associate. Right? So throughout the Tanakh, right, almost every chapter is in Joshua and Judges and Kings that they did what was fluent to Yashar Beinav. They did everything they wanted to do, worship this, they worship that. So let me ask you a question. How many other times in Jewish history did God say to the prophet, okay, how I'm gonna kill off the entire Jewish people and start with you? Never. Never. You guys seem pretty firm about that. And you are correct. You are correct. I don't know of any time either. So that makes me go, So why Daf now? Why now? Why now? In Hegel, now it's the most egregious thing. But almost every other generation, they worshipped idols, and there's no tremendous punishment that is offered. So, as I say, we must be doomed, right? So there was a long introduction to that first half of this year, is to say that we are doomed, right? The Chet Hegel, we don't understand it, but we must be doomed. But however, I'm going to present another side of this issue. All right, I'm going to start with the bottom of page 2 in the handout, and it's the pasuk from chapter 32, pasuk 34.
No questions allowed?
No questions. No questions. Like questions for later. They're allowed, but they're allowed later on.
No. Okay, so.
We'll have a Q&A session in a couple of weeks with Tisa. All right, so take a look at this pasuk. This is right after a lot of the discussion, a lot of Moshe imploring Hashem to forgive the people. He says, okay, as a middle ground, Hashem says, okay, lead the people and my angel shall go before you. Right? So I'm not going to focus on that, the middle ground, because Moshe made sure to argue that Hashem should continue to be in their midst. He didn't want to just be like any other nation of the world. That's not good enough. And he called out for drove a hard bargain. No, we want there to be a complete appeasement and forgiveness of the Jewish people, and we want you to be in our midst. All right, so that's not what we're focusing on. It's just the context of what it is. Right? But when I make an accounting, I will punish them for all their sins. So this is what Rashi said. The day when I make an accounting, I will punish them for their sins. At present, I listen to you and will refrain from consuming them all at once. But ever and ever throughout the ages, when I am visiting them for their present sins, which I added, I shall visit them at the same time for a little of this sin, in addition to their other sins for which I am then punishing them. Indeed, no punishment ever comes upon Israel in which there is not part payment for the sin of the golden calf. So this is the idea of we are doomed. In brass tacks, in a topless way, Hashem says, that I will always give a punishment for the sin of the golden calf, right? If it's time for the Jewish people to be punished for sin X, Y, and Z, then I'm also going to add a little bonus, a little premium for the sin of the golden calf. Wow, this is an amazing idea. We really are doomed because of the sin of the golden calf. And Rashi bases himself on the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, Amid Rabbi Yitzchak, Ein La Paranos Uparanos Sheval Olam, Ke'ein Ba Echad Mi Esrim V'Arba Echrei Litra Shel Ego Harishon. There's no punishment in which there's not 1/24 of the extra of a pound of the first calf, right? And so Safaria explains there would often be a disparity of what to 1/24th of its weight. It's a minuscule portion of the sin of the golden calf, but it's added to every punishment. We get the golden calf tax on every punishment that we have. Unbelievable statement by the Gemara, right? And this is from this pasuk, right? From Exodus 32:34. And the day when I punish, I will punish their sin upon them. Atonement for that sin is incomplete, and the Jewish people will continue to suffer for it. Oh my gosh, we are doomed. Now another text. I know, I'm loading you up with this doom and gloom. Sorry. But this is the Torah. We have to learn it. We have to understand it. And this is Yerushalmi Tanis, chapter 4, Mishnah 5. Rabbi Yudan b'shem Rabbi Yisa. Okay. Ein kol dor vador, she'ein bo onti achas mechet shel egel. An onti sounds like an ounce, right? And that's what it means. So every sin that we have has an ounce of the sin of the golden calf. Once again, we're doomed. We're doomed even when we do a sin now. This text is telling us that we're also guilty of the sin of the golden calf. We are doomed. This golden calf is just like we can't get away from it. Anywhere we turn in sin, we're going to be punished. We are facing up to the sin of the Theta Ego, the sin of the golden calf. Wow. Oh no. Put it in bold. We are doomed. This is eternal. We can never escape the aftershocks of the sin of the golden calf. Right? And once again, I go back to this argument. If it wasn't such a big sin, then why is it such a big sin? Okay, so that's the first half of this year. Right? We saw how what a chata gedola it was according to the Moshe Rabbeinu himself. And we saw several arguments that I made that that bolsters this idea. And number three, we saw how in the Gemaras, in both the Bavli and Rishalmi, we see that every sin that the Jewish people commit reflects the sin of the golden calf, and then we have to pay a tax for every sin that we do. We have to pay a golden calf tax. All right. If that was the end of the shir, then we would all be depressed and very depressed, very, very depressed. All right. So let's say, wait, it wasn't so bad. All right. So I'm gonna try something out, and I hope that it made sense to all of these coming over here. All right. So my first text is also Rashi at the end of the Torah. I think many people are aware of this Rashi, right? Because the last words of the Torah is "L'nei Kol Yisrael," right? For the before the eyes of the people of Israel, right? Shenasa libo v'shbor halokos le'nehem. Right? So Rashi all of a sudden picks up on the one element of Moshe's legacy, and he says it's when his heart was inspired to break the luchot. And that's the great moment of Moshe's prophetic career, right? Along with receiving the Torah by Hashem, but breaking the loopholes, right? If there was one thing that I would not choose for Moshe, like maybe like when he spoke to the supposed to speak to the rock and all that, but I also wouldn't. I'm not so sure if I would choose the breaking of the loopholes as the crowning achievement of Moshe's career. And yet, that's what Rashi says, right? It says, "Vashpareim leineichem," right? And I will break them for your eyes. But yeah, it went 1 second. The Hisnima Dasa Kodesh Baruch Hu L'Dato. And it's one of the times when Hashem agreed with him. Shneimar Asher Shibarta. Back in our parsha, when it says, when Hashem says the loopholes that you made, right? He says there's a play on words. Asher Shibarta sounds like Yasher Koach Sheshibarta. It's a bit of a stretch, but nevertheless, the point is that Hashem gave him a shkoyach, right? There's a shkoyach for breaking loopholes, right? So that's an amazing idea. So now we have to flesh out this idea. All right, so we're on page 4. I did the top part. Right. So Hashem said it was a good thing that he broke the loopholes. Okay. Not sure. I mean, the parsha, when Moshe takes down the loopholes, it says that Mechtav Elohim and Ma'aseh Elohim, they're divine. How could he have the chutzpah, if I can use the word, to shatter something that was divine? It was holy. It was created by Hashem. Right? So a yeshikoach for breaking it wouldn't be the first thing that I would consider. However, so we have to understand. So what was the great milah of breaking the first set of loopholes? The breaking of the first set of tablets allowed the second to be given. And this is really, really important, and we're going to flesh that out. Right? Because the first tablets indeed were kept in the Aron Kodesh, but the Meforshim discuss why the second loopholes were so important. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't given by Hashem, then why is there even a second place involved? Right? And yet, no, there's a second place. Right? Number one is it says Pesalacha. We read in chapter 34. We just read it on the fast day. Right? Pesalacha. Moshe had to carve the loopholes himself. So why is that so important? Because it suggests that the human element is important in the partnership with God. So in other words, we can derive that if that was an important part of the second loopholes, then there was something missing in the first part. You can say how wonderful the first set was because it was given by God. But we're saying that it didn't have the human elements. Wow, that's a big finish. Oh my goodness. That's an amazing idea. The second loopholes were significant because they did have the human element too. Right? And why were they were so holy? But basically the first set of loopholes were given on the level of angel. It was when Moshe Rabbeinu was on top of the mountain. Right? It means that he was given on a level of superhuman beings. Right? This is the key thing. Yes, they were holy, but they were so holy that human beings were not able to achieve that. Right? Because who can be perfect? Right? Angels are perfect. Human beings are not angels. They're human beings. It means they make mistakes. Right? So the second allows for tshuva and spiritual growth. It was kind of like a second chance. And it also is the idea of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, which we will get into later on in a second. All right, so now we're saying, oh, wait a second. Okay, there you go. wasn't so, oh, one, so wasn't, wait a second, we're opening a picture here of, like, maybe there's something positive about it. Not positive in the sense that there was a sin, but in the aftermath of the sin, it's still going, it's still going, it's still going, it's still going. Okay.
Nice of the telephone.
They had telephone. Oh, that's something here. All right, so now I want to go to Midrash. All right, let me see, what do I got here? Yeah. Right, okay. There's a lot here. I only gave you a bit of this Midrash. But if you want to go home, you can take a look at this whole passage. It's really fascinating. So, Hiskil mitzvah al shibor halukos. So Moshe began feeling bad about breaking this head. Oh, right? I love the way the Midrash puts human feeling into these great people. V'amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so Kadosh Baruch Hu is a good friend. He says, oh, don't worry, Al titztayer balukos harishonos. Don't worry, it's nishka bela, as my mother Shalom would say. Not too bad. Hello? Shelo hayu ella asem sagibros bilvad. Right? They only can't contain the Ten Commandments themselves. Balukos hashnim. But in the second set of tablets, ani no saying lacha, I grant you she'ebahem halachos midrash va'agadot. Wait a second. The second tablet. This is what I meant before. The idea of Torah Shebal Peh, that the second tablet allowed for the discussion of the oral Torah, midrash and agada and halacha that could be established through the principles of hermeneutics. Fancy word means for interpretation. So then he gives a proof text from Eo, and moreover, you receive the news that I pardoned you for the sin, and that God may overlook some of your iniquities. So this is an amazing thing. It wasn't a good, right? Yes. No, I want to try to say it wasn't a good thing, right? It was a bit of a sin that Moshe broke the tablets into fragments. Well, it doesn't really say that explicitly in the Torah, but we do come to understand that, right? But Hashem is making him feel better, right? Well, I'll overlook it. It was a bit of rage. You felt like the Jews did still such a bad thing, and felt like you couldn't see how it would, that they were worthy of the Ten Commandments. Okay. And second point is that, but now with the second tablets, with the human participation, it opens it up for a more human relationship with Torah. It has halacha, agada, and Torah Sheba Alpha. All right. So let's go further. I told you there's a lot of material here today. So let's now move to another text in Eruvin 54a. So I'm a Rabbi Eliezer, my different Charusala Lukos. What does it mean to say that the tablets were the work of Hashem and the writing of Hashem and engraved upon the tablets, which is from Shmos 32? This teaches that had the first tablet not been broken, the Torah would never have been forgotten from the Jewish people, as the Torah would have been engraved upon their hearts. Lo nishkachta Torah me Yisrael. Right? So, but since it was forgotten, the Jewish people had the responsibility to engage in study in order to restore it. Right? So, even though it wasn't a good thing that the first tablets were broken, but nevertheless, it gave them the opportunity to fight for it and to recover it and to restore it. So that's what this text is saying. And then go to Menachos 99 A and B. Just it's like the bottom few words, and then goes to the next top of the next page. I'm going to Shlakish. Ha'amim shebitula shel Torah zehu yisoda. Sometimes the nullification of Torah is its actual foundation, the Chiva Shir Shibarta, and once again, Yoshikoa Sheshibarta, right? So sometimes when we're Mavato Torah, and I emphasize sometimes, Rabbi Hyman said Vital Torah is wonderful.
Oh, no.
No, but sometimes when the Torah is nullified, sometimes it can become a foundation, right? And this is in reference to the breaking of the second tablet. So this is in the context in Menachos. You'll probably, those of you studying Daf Yomi, I think you're on something like 52 or something like that now. So you're going to get there in about another month and a half or so. So I'm helping Rabbi Green. So he doesn't have to prepare as hard. He does such a great job with the Daf Yomi. It's a tremendous. So we should go up to Rabbi Green and for all of our Rabbanim, Rabbi, that's who it's for teaching us so much during the year. All right, so if you all right, so this is in the context of stopping your studies for another mitzvah. I'm not going to get into the context of that, but the just to take it for our purposes is that the breaking of the tablets, it actually led to the foundation of the Torah in terms of the second tablets that were gifted to Moshe and Bnei Israel. And so with these texts, Rav Hutner in Pachad Yitzchak, we have to go back to Hanukkah, but it's a well-known passage and it's one of my favorites. And so it stuck out to me as part of this share that he explains that forgetting or that anything that's a rupture or a break or a fragmentation, it's not always tragic, right? Out of calamity can come interpretation and recreation. I'm talking about in terms of Torah. And from a catastrophe, such as the Chet HaEgel, it emerges renewal, right? Renewal can emerge. Right, and so then he quotes from another Gemara in Tzemura 16a that when Moshe died, 300 halachos were forgotten. Right, and Adniel ben Kenaz recalled them through Pilpul. Right, Pilpul is Talmudic argumentation. Right, and so if you have a premise, you can bring questions and then back and forth until you derive some halachic principle. So Rav Hutner, right, again, he was a Rosh Hashiva, I didn't say before, the Rosh Hashiva in Chaim Berlin, he died around 75 or so, I don't remember the exact date, but he says that forgetting and loss led to transformation and regeneration. So this is exactly what our topic is today, that the Chet HaEgel, although not a good thing, but it did allow for the regeneration of Torah. And this is a fundamental principle in Rav Hutner's and comes back to time and time again. Okay, the next piece is very long, and I'm not going to do it all with you. All right, I'll just do the beginning part with you, and this is from Shmos Rabbah. And I do urge you to look at it all because it's really a remarkable part of our shir today. So 42 and 7, you look it up in Sefaria, just do Shmos Rabbah 42:7, and it'll come right up. All right, so Avru min Aderech shared CVC that they went against the path that was commanded. It doesn't say it, It doesn't say that they went off the derech. It says, Saru Maher Min HaDerech in 32:8, in Shemot 32:8. Kishahayu B'Sinai, right? So it means that Saru Maher Min HaDerech, they quickly veered off. It's not just that they transgressed, but they, quote, quickly veered off. Kishahayu B'Sinai, Hayu Shoshanim V'Radim. When they were at Sinai, they were like roses and lilies, I think they translated.
Yeah.
Is that a good modern translation? Okay. Achshav na'asu sarayot. And now they translated it as Powell na'asu kazavim. They were untruthful. Lo asu, lo sha'a, lo shtayim. It didn't take even 1 or 2 hours. Ela miyad saru, right? They went off the path right away, immediately. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, achad asar yom hayu im HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No, he says, no, they were even a little bit better. They were 11 days with Hashem. And he has a quote from Devarim chapter 1. And then, right, and then they went to Mount Seir after 11 days, and they performed an act of Seir. A Seir was a goat, so it means that they engaged in idolatry. Okay, so it wasn't immediate. It was 11 days. Okay, so he's even nicer. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Eli. They were with the Holy and Blessed for 1 day. And he also has a proof text. So on and on and on. I'm not going to belabor this point. I'm just going to summarize what the Midrashim say. So we have a total of 8 Midrashim, and it gives like different time periods of when the Jewish people were unfaithful to God. It was a moment, it was 11 days, it was 29 days. There are many variations, but the point is clear. That although they said clearly and full-throatedly, I think I spelled that and pronounced it correctly, they said, Nasa v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. And for that, right, we say, oh my gosh, they were tremendous spiritual, according to the Gemara in Shabbos, 87, they received crowns for this, 1 pound for Nasa, 1 for Nishma. Oh my God, they were on a great level, but at the same time, they were already focused on truth. So what I want to suggest with these last texts, right? So what I've done so far is to summarize is in those texts about forgetting and about renewal was that the faith ega led to something positive. That's the takeaway from all of those texts. And the second point here is from these midrashim is that they were already wishy-washy about their commitment to Hashem. Even though we say that they were on a great spiritual level, the fact is, practically speaking, they were not. Because at the same time that they were saying not seven Ishma, we see here that they were already prepared, right, to commit idolatry, right? And so I see that's how I'm going to come up with, right, this is my kind of middle position to understand why it was such a great sin. It wasn't a great sin in the moment, right? And we see it was a great sin, but not an eternal sin for that one moment because they weren't prepared. It wasn't fair that Hashem would never punish eternally for one sin that they were not really prepared for to do. But what they did was that they were ready So there is a connection in every sin that we do to the Chet HaEgel. That's my point. It's not that they were punished for that one moment, but every sin we're punished because every sin is a reflection of the sin of the golden. So the sin of the golden calf was idolatry. That's what we said from the beginning. And every sin that we do now is an element of idolatry. Because if we're sinning, that means we don't 100% believe in Hashem. If we did, we wouldn't sin. It's that simple. That means every sin that we do is a reflection of the faith of Abraham. So therefore, we are punished for the sin of the golden calf, and I put it in caps, not as a life sentence, but because every sin we do is idolatrous, right? As I mentioned a couple weeks ago from Rav Lichtenstein, it was a catastrophe. The Chet HaEgel was a catastrophe waiting to happen because the Jewish people were not on the level of practicing Torah, so that they were on achieving the level. They kind of jumped to the head of the line to receive the Torah, but they weren't ready to fully accept it in a lived way. Right? So why did Hashem do it that way? That's the big question. I didn't put this in, but I realized as I was sleeping last night that that element is still, so I'm still creating the shir. Why did Hashem do it that way? So the answer is that I came up with was that I only wasn't talking to myself. Yeah. Huh? I believe that Hashem did it that way to give us something to aspire to, right? We are human and we do get second chances. That's why we have That's why we have Yom Kippur. But we would have had Yom Kippur anyway because we're human and we need second chances. We will make mistakes, right? So that's what he did it in such a way, right? Hashem is in charge, right? So he did it in such a way that it gave people the chance to do tshuva and the opportunity to create the Torah Sheba Al-Peh. Right, so just to round out these questions, the Mishkan does not only have to be for the sin of the golden calf, it can also be for the ideal of having Hashem in our midst, right? To remind us to always keep Hashem as our focus. And Yom Kippur also can be the ideal way of serving Hashem, even if we didn't have this golden calf. But because we're human, we definitely need the ability to atone for our sin. So our mission then is to use the opportunity that Tshuva affords us to come closer and closer to Hashem, right? Right, achieving that aspiration of going back to Sinai and going back to Gan Eden again. And if we can do that, then we'll merit the rebuilding of the Mishkan and the renewal of the Avodah of Yom Kippur in the ideal way. So, all right. So, any thoughts, comments on this discussion? Yeah. If
we only have the first tablets, would we also have the Torah Shabbat and everything else?
No, we would not. Yeah.
We wouldn't need it.
We wouldn't have that. We would need it. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, if we only have the first tablets, would we have the Torah Shabbat Peh? And our whole share was no, we wouldn't have it, right? I mean, the second tablet opened up the Torah Shabbat Peh. Or let me change that a little bit, just tweak a little bit. I would say we would have Torah Shabbat Peh in a different way. You know, it would be just that the rigid explication of the Torah that Hashem gave to Moshe Rabbeinu on Sinai, right? Because we would have to know what these mitzvahs do entail. Yeah. One second. Yeah.
The golden calf was a national sin. And I'm wondering if that's a paradigm for individual sin.
So the question is national sin versus individual sin. Hmm. Yeah, I believe so. I mean, all of us are part of the nation, as individuals, but we're beyond that as a nation. But yeah, I think that's part of, I think that's what Rav Hutner was saying, that we have teshuva as individuals, and it's part of this whole episode. Yeah, yeah.
I'm so confused though.
Oh, good. So am I.
Okay, the thing here, I have in my head is that when Moshe was in Shemayim, he also learned the oral Torah. So if he learned the oral Torah, even though he broke the tablets, he would have it in his head and he would be able to transmit it to the Israel.
Right. Well, I answered that part. The question is, well, he learns from, from many sources that he's on the mountain for 40 days and he learns, the oral law. I think that's why I'm saying that it's a different kind of oral law. It was that material, but not in the way where there would be forgetting and learning and hopeful and developing it on a deeper level. Maybe that's a little clearer.
That's helpful.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that there's a dangerous temptation, and I've heard this expressed that the breaking of the first tablets was a contribution from mankind going in the other direction, and
I don't know what do you mean by,
well,
you said there was a
there was an
contribution
adjustment.
from
There
human
was
in
an
the other
adjustment.
direction.
It was an adjustment of the ultimate law. In this respect, that when he comes back with the second set of tablets, and they're identical to the first,
True.
that's a proof that this is not true. That this is a temptation, which is a deviation. And
Well, I think I'm interpreting what you're saying, but like some of the heterodox movements of Judaism use these texts to justify renewing in a different sense.
adjustments.
And you're saying that you still have to do it in a.
The right way.
Yeah,
The right way
there
is
is
to give down the first time, and it'll always be.
So the point is that the second tablets were identical to the first, and not to give in to temptation to make changes that are unauthorized. Okay, all right, one more, two more. Yeah, Erwin.
But for me, always the problem was they saw all the nisim in Mitzrayim. Can you imagine seeing ice cube with fire around it? And how could they not believe it? They have to sing all those matos after walking through Kriya.
I dealt with them personally. I was brainwashed by that question for 50 years. And when I get older, I'm like, no. The fact that you see a miracle absolutely does not translate into action. I'm the opposite. I think no. Psychologically, it's very difficult. And Franz Rosenzweig said that if the Frankfurt on Main, if the Main River stopped, people still would not be on Shabbos. People would still not be Shomer Shabbos. So I know it took me a long time to understand what he was saying because I was brainwashed like you. And I am the opposite. I think no. The fact that they saw miracles has zero correlation with future fealty to Torah. Yeah. It's okay. I hear you. Right. All right, one second. So Moshe and Aaron last week, right, there was a discussion of who would become the Kohen Gadol, right? This is the first big test. So the question is that Aaron seemed to fail in his first test. Yeah, I'm not one to judge, but yes, the Torah does seem to indicate Moshe says it himself, and Hashem says it himself, and Midrashim say that Hashem also was lenient on Aaron. Yeah, I mean, he's not perfect either. I mean, some say that he was afraid that Kor, right? Kor was a great Jewish leader that was mentioned earlier in the Torah, but he's not mentioned again. We don't see him. So they said, the Midrash says that he was killed because he did try to stop the Theta. So I don't know. I'm not going to judge Aharon McCoy. I don't know what I could have done. All right. So one more question, comment. Yes.
Just a tiny question. Do we see anywhere
I
here,
know I'm in trouble. A tiny question.
do we see anywhere where Aaron was punished for the Egel Hazah? Because it occurred to me that he lost two sons.
Yeah, there are some texts that say that. Yeah, but he was. Question was Aaron punished? And then some texts indicate that his children that died. It's a tough way to go. I don't know. I'm not going to weigh in personally on that issue. Okay, everyone. Thank you. Shalom.
Sincerely answer the question. He's changed everything. And he makes it not like I have to joke.
Bob White.
They're the ones who and it's one of the great things does it. You needed to report. I heard that you okay. I'm ready. Where are the Where's Thank you. He was only learning.